Do have to push the button. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Pandemic Council meeting, April 7 to 20. I'll hand over to the CEO, please.
Item 1, recording and live streaming of council meetings. All council meetings are filmed with both video and audio being recorded. Video is focused on a specific area, however audio from the entire room is captured. By speaking during question time or at any time during the meeting, you consent to your voice and any comments you make being recorded. In common with all narrative during council meetings, verbal responses to congratulations, obituaries and question time will not be recorded in the written minutes. The reason behind recording council meetings is of course to hold us more accountable and improve the transparency of council's decision making to our community. The full meeting is being streamed live on Council's YouTube channel, Alpine Shire Council, and will also be available on YouTube channel shortly after this meeting.
Acknowledgement of traditional custodians and recognition of all people.
The Alpine Shire Council acknowledges the traditional owners of the land we are now on. We also acknowledge those people who have contributed to the rich fabric of our community and strive to make wise decisions that will improve the quality of life for all.
Confirmation of minutes for the ordinary meeting M2 3rd of March 2020. Can I have a mover and Councillor Pearce? Councillor Forsyth, all those in favour? Carried. Apologies, of which we have none, and apologise that we haven't got a gallery, but given changed circumstances, that's...
We've got a healthy squad.
Yeah. Obituaries and congratulations from in front of me, Councillor Pearce.
Congratulations to all our local people in all our big towns for holding down and holding the curve and making our figures look good.
Any other obituaries and congratulations?
Can I just also say, Councillor Pearce, I would like to congratulate the residents of the Alpine Shire. I believe that in this current circumstance, everything seems to be going along pretty well as planned. Apart from the initial hoarding of a few things, and I'm not looking at anybody in particular, I think there's no angst, and I haven't seen anything. In the odd times that I've been to the supermarket, everybody seems to be acting quite rationally now, which is good.
Any further? Councillor Napstone.
I'd just like to acknowledge and thank whoever it is that's gotten together and put those signs up on all the seats throughout Bright. I don't know how widespread it is, but they're signs of encouragement and they're very morale boosting. I'm thinking it might have been the younger demographic. I don't know who it is, but thank you.
Any further? Declarations by councillors of conflict of interest.
May I start, Mr Mayor?
Councillor Pearce.
There's an item on tonight's agenda that involves... I'm loud enough, and I would have my so-called conflict of interest, I don't think it is tonight there's an item on the agenda which is the refurbishment of the toilet block in Century Park by the riverside, and my son put in a quote for the job, was unsuccessful, and that'll go through tonight and through council, and I'm quite happy with it, and I will most likely vote for it, and I feel I have no conflict of interest.
Thank you, Councillor Pearce. Any further? No? On we go. Questions on notice. Given the state of emergency declared to address COVID-19, the meeting will be live streamed. We strongly discourage gallery attendance and request people view meeting online in the interest of public health and to maintain social distancing measures. As you can see, we're all sitting apart from each other, practicing social distancing.
How do we look?
Physical distancing.
Physical distancing, yes. We have several questions on notice, and the first one Mr CEO, I'll get you to read it out. Oh, hang on, it's here at the front of the thing here, isn't it? I'll read it and then you can answer it. It's from the Upper Kiowa Valley Community Association, Jody Betheris. I would like to provide the Upper Kiowa Valley's apology for not Upper Kiowa Valley Community Association's apology for not attending the Bright Council meeting. I've included 2 questions. The questions being, the Upper Kiowa Valley Community Association would like a progress report on the bushfire recovery program, and in particular what has been done to address the questions and comments raised at the 2 community feedback sessions in late January. We would like Steve Robertson to commit to a weekly email updates on all the programs he is working on so we can feed that information back to our community as required. Question 2. Who is responsible for communication within the Alpine Shire? Why wasn't Steve Robertson told of the Upper Kiowa Valley Community Association existence when he was first employed? Why did the Shire direct him to the fledgling Chamber of Commerce, which is still yet to be incorporated, rather than to our organisation, which has been functioning legally for over 9 years? Mr. Bird.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you, Jody, for your question. I think we discussed this probably about 6 weeks ago via telephone, but happy to respond again. So in terms of an update, the first question, this week Council will commence, actually today we commence the process of seeking nominations from community for membership on the Alpine Community Recovery Committee. We will be seeking 2 nominations from the Kiowa Valley, and members of the UK VCA are welcome to nominate. 2 key roles of the Alpine Community Recovery Committee are to maintain a community recovery plan that describes the actions being taken and progress made in addressing short, medium and long-term recovery priorities as identified by the committee, and to keep communities informed of recovery issues, plans and actions arising from the committee's work. The communications plan established by the Alpine Community Recovery Committee will cover the method and frequency of communication to community groups across the Alpine Shire, including the UK VCA. The suggestions raised in the community catch-ups across the Shire have been collated and used to inform actions contained within the first draft of the Municipal Recovery Plan. In relation to your second question, I'm ultimately responsible for the communication from Council staff, and I apologise if the UK VCA felt as though they were missed out on this occasion. The informal Chamber of Commerce that we met with, that the representative officers met with, were identified as an important group to meet with, and I apologise if the UK VCA felt left out. The role of the Council's Bushfire Recovery Team involves a broad engagement across Alpine Shire bushfire affected communities to ensure that everyone in the community has opportunity to have their voice heard. The team has not been directed to engage with particular community groups to the detriment of others.
Thank you, Mr. Bird. Now we have several questions relating to the pandemic we find ourselves in. The first one is from Mark Barnes, and his question is, what is the Shire doing to ensure that accommodation owners and accommodation booking agents within the Shire have cancelled all bookings for Easter and into the foreseeable future? And 2, now that the signs are in place directing visitors to return home, how is this initiative intended to be enforced? So, to answer Mr Barnes' questions, Council continues to actively promote messaging from the state and federal government about the restrictions which have been imposed as a result of the COVID-19 emergency. This includes a stay-at-home direction with the clear messaging, if you can stay home, you must stay home. Question 2. Victoria Police has delegated authority to enforce the directions provided by the state government. If members of the public observe behaviours they consider a breach of Stage 3 restrictions which are in place, it is recommended that they contact Victorian Coronavirus Hotline on 1800 675 398. Option 4 on that hotline number in the menu allows reporting of a breach. We also have a letter in the similar vein from Kate Farrell, the response to Ms Farrell's letter is, the Council continues to actively promote messaging from the state and federal government about the restrictions which have been imposed as a result of the COVID-19 emergency. To enforce this messaging, Council has developed its variable messaging boards and prominent roadside locations across the Shire. Victoria Police, again, has the authority to enforce the directions, and again, the same coronavirus hotline. Question 4 is from the Upper Kil Valley Community Association with reference to the Toowoomba Caravan Park. Even before the leases run out, we have had many messages from tourists, many of whom have been holidaying at this caravan park for many years, expressing their concerns. We sought information from DWELP and forwarded it to many of these tourists. The question that Mary Pike asked on behalf of the Upper Kil Valley Community Association is, what steps is the Alpine Show taking in cooperation with DWELP to see this caravan brought back into line? To answer your question, Mary, we have been in contact with various ministers in the state government and federal government regarding the plight of the Toowoomba Caravan Park, and only recently had conversation with the Premier about the closure, and we are still hoping that we can find a resolution with government and DWELP to have the park open, but obviously because of the COVID-19 pandemic, the government probably has a couple of other issues that are a little bit more important. But we fully understand how important that caravan park is to the community of Toowoomba, and when I spoke to the Premier, he also expressed his concern that we were losing accommodation venue in our shire, and had asked for us to submit some information on what it would cost to fix and what timeline could we expect to deliver that fix so as we can open the park. Question 5 is a question from Leslie Schwartz. And this one is another one about COVID-19, and in reality the response is the same as I've had for the other COVID-19 questions. Question 6, this is from Dominic Marisset, who has today contacted all councillors by telephone regarding a planning item on the agenda, and we might actually get to this question when we get closer to the agenda item, Ms Cook. So when we get to that agenda item, remind me to bring up the question again, and we'll answer it then. Question 7 is a letter from the Bright Rod and Custom Club.
Point of order, Mr Mayor.
Yep.
If I could just go back to the previous note, question or alleged question. I take that more as a statement than a question to
from the
council.
Bright Rod and Custom Club?
No, in relation to the planning application.
Oh, the question, yes, I can see your point there, Ron, Mr. Janus, Councillor Janus, but in point there's a couple of errors that he's addressed, and we would like to make sure that those errors are noted, so when we get to the point of decision, that we have had all the information in front of us.
I accept that one. Thank you.
Thank you. Happy to be pulled up.
No, that's all.
Happy to be pulled up. So, the Secretary of the Bright Rod and Custom Club has written to us, Tracy Porwick, and would like us to take into consideration there's quite a few statements in here that I'm not quite sure about, and I'm going to read this letter to you. And reasonably the bit I would like to read is a bit that where the Bright Rod and Custom Club absolutely implore you not to impose the blanket alcohol ban across the CBD of Bright during the Rod Run, and instead reinstate the 8:30 to midnight ban. Alternatively, could we please delay making a decision until it can be discussed with you directly? We were told we would be offered this opportunity, and it was only notified, and we were only notified about this recommendation last Wednesday. The rest of it is just statement. Could I have Mr. Jeremy, have you been? You've been dealing with this, haven't you? Could you give me some information about how we have corresponded with the Bright and Custom Club, please, and when we have met and discussed what our plans were?
Certainly, Mr. Mayor. So if I step back through to the early December 2019, there was a debrief meeting held with a number of stakeholders, including the Brighton the Hot Rod Club. That was on the 3rd of December. Rolling forward to the 14th of January, I met with members of the committee here in Alpanshire Council. In that meeting, we had a bit of a debrief from the meeting back in 2019, and we also talked about the 2020 meeting, and I was very clear that the recommendation we would be putting to Council was that there would be a repeat of the alcohol restrictions that were in place the previous year, and that was understood by the committee at that time. At that time, we were planning to take the recommendation to the March Council meeting. Subsequently, there was a discussion between Mike Deely from the committee and Elaine Burridge. That occurred between the 19th and 24th of February. In that discussion, Mike Deely, on behalf of the Custom Club, requested that we defer the report to the council meeting from the March council meeting to the April council meeting. And the reason for that request was that they wanted to see how the Brighton Days Festival rolled out before the recommendation was put to council. So we accepted that request, and we agreed to defer the presentation of that report until the April council meeting. There was a further follow-up conversation between Elaine Burridge and Mike Deely on the 19th of March, where there was a discussion about how the Brighton Days Festival had panned out. And Elaine followed up on the 24th of March with an email to Mike Deely, which confirmed the conversation on the 19th of March and very clearly stated that there would be a recommendation to the April Council meeting in relation to an alcohol restrictions that would be put in place. Finally, 1st of April, there was an email to all the stakeholders who attended the community debrief meeting in December, again reiterating that there was a recommendation coming to Council for a repeat of the restrictions that were in place in 2019.
Thank you, Mr. Jeremy. Has anyone got any question about that explanation? I think that the explanations, to me, there's been plenty of communication with the Bright Rod and Custom Club. Question 8, again, Dominic Marisset, and we will deal with those questions when this planning document gets to us. So that's the questions, all the questions we have. Yeah, we can, Daryl. Councillor Pearce.
So what I'm hearing is that no, we're not going to, we're going to just go with what we had last year, and they have, sorry, you have to wear that. Is that where we're at?
We have got the agenda item later in the report, so we might leave that conversation until we get the agenda item.
Thank you.
Item 8, presentation of reports by officers. Chief Executive Officer Charlie Bird.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Could you speak up?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. 8.1.1, contracts approved by the CEO, relates to the award of the contract for Roberts Creek Road Bridge renewal. It's recommended that the contracts be approved by the CEO be noted.
Councillor Keeble and Councillor Nicholas, all those in favour? Carried. 8.1.2, instrument of delegation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This report relates to the instrument of delegation, which is important means of council delegating its powers and duties and functions under the Act to the CEO and other members of staff. The last time the delegations were approved by council was May 2019. The current situation we find ourselves in with the coronavirus pandemic is that we could find ourselves where we won't have a quorum, so we cannot have a council meeting. So in effect, a lot of the actions undertaken by council would come to a standstill without any decisions being allowed to be made by council. So in effect, this council report here and this recommendation is such that in the event that there's a state of emergency and council is unable to achieve a quorum and hold a council meeting, that broader powers be delegated to the CEO, and the CEO could make those decisions. Not all decisions can be delegated to the CEO. If decisions which would ordinarily come to a council meeting are delegated to the CEO, in that circumstance, a council report would be prepared, and a report also provided to council at a subsequent council meeting when they met again.
So moved.
Councillor Janus and Councillor Forsyth.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think this is an important item that we have on our agenda tonight, because as Mr. Bird has said, this only comes into play during a state of emergency, and we find ourselves in sort of unique times at the moment. And the business of government, of local government, needs to be ensured to continue, and this is not a holus bolus handover of all powers to the CEO or his other staff, senior staff members. So it is also delegated to nominated members of staff of the directorate, should the CEO not even be able to be here. But the exclusions, reading through the notes, include not being able to declare a rate or a change, the power to borrow money, the power to approve expenditure not contained in a budget approved by council, and any power, duty or function of the council under section 223, and any prescribed power. It has been mooted in local government areas that the state government should provide legislation to change the way we run our meetings during this time, but the only way that can be done is if we are in a state of disaster. And the Premier, I understand at this point in time, is not prepared to declare a state of disaster, and the only other way we can meet as councillors in the circumstances, so via Zoom or other methods, then the Act has to change, and that Act can only be changed by an Act of Parliament. And Parliament is not sitting at the moment, but I do understand that the government is giving serious consideration to for local government in the way that they run their meetings. So I think this is an important matter that we have before us. We must ensure that council business is allowed to continue for the benefit of our ratepayers and our staff. We're doing a fantastic job at the moment, they are, and we need for them to continue and have surety that they can continue in their duties.
Thank you, Councillor Janus. Councillor Forsyth.
I can only confer with what Councillor Janus has said and point out or reiterate two things. One is that these conditions only apply and only come into force when there is a state of an emergency. And secondly, if we cannot form a quorum at a council meeting, at an ordinary council meeting. Now, majority states of emergency are short-lived, so this is currently a unprecedented time. So whether this state of emergency lasts for the next 3 months, 6 months, we don't know. In that period of time, as Councillor Janus said, council still needs to operate, and on a daily basis. If during those forthcoming months this council cannot meet, then it is only fair and reasonable that the person who is CEO or acting CEO at the time has got the power in order to pay the wages and whatever else. So that's where it's at.
Councillor Keeble?
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I just want to point out, I concur with what Councillor Forsyth and Councillor Janis has said. In the power of delegation, I've just noticed, and I hadn't noticed it earlier, but the last paragraph, which starts where legislation allows it, the CEO can further subdelegate his powers. I'm just wondering if the his can be just be striked to their powers, because if this is going to happen during emergency times, it could have a female CEO the next time this happens. So just wanted to note that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Keeble. Too much time editing your PhD, I think. Any further?
Just one small question.
Councillor Pearce.
Very important. Hello. There was a suggestion on the media only a couple of weeks ago that there was a Camp Victorian Council that were going to meet, and they weren't going to be together at a meeting. Did that go ahead at all, or what happened?
I think you're referring to Indigo Shire Council, where they were unable to form a quorum, and so they did.
It was Indigo. It was another one.
That Indigo's the only one I'm aware of, and they.
South someone. That's okay.
To the vote. All those in favour? Carried. 8.2.1, Director of Assets, Mr Jeremy.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This report relates to the award of a contract for the renewal of the Centenary Park toilet block in Bright. The works include modifications...
Excuse me, Mr Jeremy. Councillor Pearce had nominated a conflict of interest.
Did I go that far, or did I say that I'll go out?
We would note that Councillor Pearce is leaving the chamber at 7:32. Continue, Mr Jeremy.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The works that are proposed include modifications to the roof to increase the level of natural light inside the amenities, and the remodelling of the internal layout to provide 3 additional toilets in the female facility and 2 additional pans and an additional urinal in the men's facility. Both male and female disabled and ambulant toilets will be provided, as well as change benches and an anti-slip epoxy floor coating.
So moved.
Seconded.
Councillor Forsyth, Councillor Epstein. Councillor Forsyth.
I think this is just it's a good thing. It's things that just need to be done around the Shire, and tidying up some of our older toilet blocks, so it's good.
Councillor Epstein.
Here, and I think it solves the problem of the leaking urinal and all those other things. So, Ray, if you're out there somewhere, this is being done.
Any for Councillor Janis?
Yeah, I'd like to just congratulate our staff in the designing of these things, and I know this is, something we don't often talk about, but I think it does need to be spoken about, where there is often a discrepancy in the number of male and female toilets. And having travelled overseas on a number of occasions, some tourist areas, and Bright is a large tourist area, there is a mismatch there, and I'm pleased to see that we are actually looking in our design to facilitate more of ladies' facilities over and above men's, because often, obviously, they have different needs in that area.
Councillor Epstein.
Can I just ask a quick question, Will, about the current situation and the virus? How is that impacting on our toilets, on how we're managing them, maintaining them, the whole hand washing thing? Is there an impact there yet?
So thank you, Councillor Epstein. Toilets actually come under facilities, the actual day-to-day maintenance and running the toilet. So we have installed soap dispensers in all our public toilets now. That was undertaken a couple of weeks ago, so they should be rolled out across all our public toilets. And we've also increased the rate of cleaning of our toilets. The toilets are now cleaned across the Shire every day. There is been some guidance released from the state government with regards to how to appropriately clean public facilities and also what PPE is to be used for that. So we've communicated that to our internal cleaners, but we also have some contract cleaning companies that undertake work for us as well, and we've also ensured that they have that same information.
Okay, we done? To the vote. All those in favour? Carried. Councillor Pearce? Note that Councillor Pearce re-entered the chamber at 7:35. Thank you, Councillor Pearce. (8.2.2) Gavin Street pedestrian crossing points tender recommendation. Mr. Jeremy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This report relates to the award of a contract for the construction of curb out stands, median island refuges, footpath works and landscaping in Gavin Street in the centre of Bright. The need for safer pedestrian crossing points in Gavin Street was identified as a priority by the community through the Alpine Better Places project, as well as during the development of the Bright car parking plan. The project was budgeted at 255,000 and regional roads.
Councillor Pearce, Councillor Napstein. Councillor Pearce. Councillor Napstein.
Just a quick question about the difference between a refuge and a crossing, please, just to clarify. Any further? To the vote. All those in favour? Carried. 8.2.3 Municipal Pandemic Plan. Mr. Jeremy.
The recommendation this evening is that Council endorse the Municipal Pandemic Plan version 2.0/2020.
So moved.
Second.
Councillor Janus, Councillor Pearce. Councillor Janus.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This plan has been brought together by a team of people within council and external agencies. Although it is as up to date as we can get it, following advice from DHHS. It will not cover the current COVID-19 pandemic. We understand that DHHS is updating their procedures, and when that is done, we will also need to update ours. But this is the most current information that we have, and I certainly commend the staff, council staff that put this together. So, Mr. CEO, please take that back, and Mr. Jeremy, to the staff. There was a good discussion about it. So this is as up to date as we can get, and I commend this recommendation to council.
Thank you, Councillor Janus. Councillor Pearce.
Well, I totally concur Councillor Ron's words and thoughts, and share my gratitude to our staff.
Thank you, Councillor Pearce. Any further questions?
Yes,
or
I
comments?
have a question.
Councillor Forsyth.
Thank you, Councillor Roper. Hearing what Councillor Janus has just said regarding DHHS, one could then assume that this may then come across our desk in the near future again, and we
One
have
dares
to...
One dares to presume, Councillor Forsyth?
Yes, one dares to presume. One would then also hope that it does cover off on other pandemics, like dot point 1 here does actually say with references to other pandemics that may arise, however, nothing actually specific. I'm just wondering, however, each LGA, by the look of this, must have a pandemic plan. I would have thought that in the case of this particular one, the plan that we would be following would have to be a state plan or a federal plan. And so therefore, does this override that, or do they override ours? That's my question, I suppose.
Fair point.
Thank you, Councillor Forsyth. So we follow the direction of DHHS. So essentially the plan that we've put forward here is aligned with the latest advice that we've received from DHHS. So those two plans are aligned. How DHHS's plan aligns with the state plan is a little less clear. But yeah, it's very clear that we follow the direction of DHHS in preparing our plan.
Councillor Janus?
Yes, thanks, Mr. Mead. Look, this is it's for an influenza pandemic, and should we be given other references, I'm sure that council will abide by that reference. There was something else I was going to say and I've totally forgotten. I'm sorry. However, we will move with what we have at the moment, and we're always reviewing our emergency management plans anyway as we have to. With this plan, it includes areas that are only relate to what we have in this area. So, in relation to burial grounds, funeral people, hospitals, and it's all got its own specific reference. However, there is a broader reference in how to deal with certain areas, and that would be statewide.
Thank you, Councillor Janus. If there's no more, we'll go to the vote. All those in favour? Carried. 8.3, Director Corporate, Ms Cook, Alpine Shire Council Plan 2017 to 21, 2020 review.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. An annual review of the council plan is a requirement of the Local Government Act. This report provides an outline of the 2020 review process and recommendation for changes to this document. The council plan has been reviewed and there are no changes proposed to the strategic content of the document. Administrative updates will include a new front cover to signify the current year, and a brief update to reflect the current mayor The strategic resource plan for 2020 and to 2023 will also be updated to reflect the long-term financial plan and the budget, which is due to be adopted in June 2020 to ensure that our SRP is adopted annually in line with legislative requirements. So the recommendation is that Council note that a review of the Council plan has been undertaken and the follow those changes.
So moved.
Councillor Keeble. Councillor Nicholas. Councillor Keeble.
Nice to see that the current mayor photograph will be changed and the message. Otherwise, fairly operational, I think, this one. So thank you for making that all done. Thank you.
Mr Mayor, I would like to comment there.
Yes. Councillor Janus.
I thought my photo was rather nice. Actually, I had a haircut and everything for the day.
Can it be put in? Can that be put in the appendix then, of the council plan? No. Yes, past mayor. Yes.
Or that we have to have a haircut before we get the photo taken. Councillor Nicholas.
Nothing to add.
Any further to the vote? All those in favour? Carried. Again, Ms Cook, Finance Report 8.3.2, Quarterly Review.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
So moved.
Councillor Keeble, Councillor Forsyth. Councillor Keeble.
No, I'll let Councillor Forsyth. You have anything? No.
Councillor Forsyth.
Look, no, nothing really to add, apart from the fact that I'm glad that Ms Cook actually pointed out that this is only till the end of December, which is Q2, and that those figures, council forecasting full-year surpluses, those will change, I think, dramatically in this next quarter. So that's the only thing I would like to point out. So if you think that we're sitting on a pot of gold, we're not actually.
Yes, prior to the bushfires. Any further comment? Or to the vote? Carried. 8.3.3, Telstra Telecommunications Contract Award. Ms Cook. Moving to seconder.
So moved. Sorry.
Councillor Janus, Councillor Nicholas. Councillor Janus.
Mr Mayor, thank you. Look, this to me is just really a governance issue. It's a carryover for another year of our contract. Telstra, at this point in time, are the best place to provide the services that we require here. There's certainly that extra expenditure, and they have agreed to keep the costings as they are at the moment, and that's probably one of the few companies around that are keeping their services at the same price. So I think it's really a reasonably no-brainer.
Councillor Nicholas. Sorry, Councillor Janus, didn't mean to cut you off.
Finished. Done. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree. It's a continuation of business and it's what we need to do, but I also wanted to note that in the report there's some discussion about using voice over internet protocol and therefore changing the way we do our business in the future, which I think is great. It's modern and looking forward to it being in place.
Councillor Forsyth.
Yeah, just a question, Ms Cook. If the state government organised this in 2017 and the sunset was 31st of March 2021, why were the negotiations not started earlier?
I can't tell you the answer to that, I'm afraid. Councillor Forsyth, it's out of our hands. It's Department of Premier and Cabinet who are maintaining these contracts.
Okay. One would have thought that 6 months ago they'd be looking at that and thinking about it.
Any further? To the vote? All those in favour? Carried. 8.3.4, designation of restrictions on the consumption of liquor on council land during Bright's iconic Rod Run in 2020. Ms Cook.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The purpose of this report is to recommend that Council approves restrictions on the consumption of liquor on council land under clause 2.2.1 of the Community Local Law 2019 during Bright's iconic Rod Run from Thursday the 5th of November to Monday. The proposed
So moved.
Councillor Keeble. Councillor Knapstein. Councillor Keeble.
Thank you for putting up the recommendations. This has been an ongoing discussion for some time now, a couple of years, with the Rod Run and other events. I note that the Brightest Days had an alcohol restriction, and that seemed to go very well from what all accounts with the amount of people. The Katy Perry one was non-alcoholic and it was full. This is some sensible restrictions on alcohol for what is a very busy weekend and also a much family-orientated weekend. And I think there's been quite a lot of conversations with the Rod Run Committee and other sections of the Bright community since the last event last year. Sorry, Mr Mayor.
Sorry to cut you off.
My
Keeble, I thought you'd finished. Councillor Knapstein.
I think it's good, and I think there are no surprises here. So I know there are some people that are disappointed, but there are so many more that have supported this. And given we're talking about events and how things might look in the future, much as it would be lovely to go back to the way that we were, we don't know what impacts there are going to be on these larger events. And certainly the control on alcohol is going to play in favour of what the added restrictions might be. I don't know what they are, I don't know the answers, but I'm just thinking things are going to look a little different for a while.
Councillor Knapstein, any further questions? Councillor Pearce. The wording suggests so. So I suppose we're at the juncture that realistically, that if someone wanted to have an event in the town, that they've got to apply to the Victorian Liquor Licensing and Gaming, I think it's VLGA, isn't it? VLG, yeah, well, it's whatever an acronym is, and then they go through the process and they correspond back with us, and yeah, so what we're doing is putting the ban in place from what I understand, and correct me if I'm wrong, Ms Cook, or Mr. CEO, Charlie. We're putting in, so if people wanted to do something otherwise than what we're currently, they've got time to organise themselves.
A much family orientated event, the hot rod event. To what extent?
You mean numbers? I don't have the numbers.
Well, not numbers,
but definitely it's mums and dads and kids, and from
well,
the
do they lead them, or is it just for the kiddies, or is it for the adults too?
Well, I think it's for I think it's for everyone. I think it's for everyone. Yeah.
Mr. Bird.
I think those adults that want to drink at some stage, there's venues for that. Yeah.
Mr. Bird, no, so you first, Councillor Janus.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I concur with my colleague in Councillor Keeble's comments, and I'm pleased to say that we have started our communications earlier than previously, and they've been good and they've been noted and who we've spoken to. What this does, and as the Mayor has rightly pointed out, that should any organisation wish to have a venue within the exclusion area, there is a process that they can adopt, which is the proper process, and now is the time to commence that process, because it does take time to get through all the various departments. So I would encourage them, if that's what they want to do, go ahead and do that. And I think we've also made a concession from, yes, with the timing, rather than from the Wednesday, it's now from the Thursday. So we've allowed an extra day there in that period of time. So, you know, we're listening to what and looking at what has happened previously and trying to make it a better event as we go along for everybody concerned. And by following the process, people getting themselves organised, they've got the time frames, get in and do it, and let's just see that we can make it a bigger and better event for everyone concerned. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Any further questions? Comment? Councillor Pearce, you're looking perplexed.
No. I've got my issues on it, and I've probably indicated it in some ways. Ron gave me a bit of faith back, or promised that, you know, what I'm frightened as it might say, and what I'm frightened as it might say is that, no, that's it. It's the same as last year. We can't change nothing. So, but I'm just hoping it is open to some compromise or discussion. Thank you.
I suppose the gallery might be interested as to why, when we had the conversation about communication with the Rod Run, Mr. Jeremy answered the question, but when we get to the liquor licence aspect of it, that Ms. Cook is actually under her delegation for the liquor licence. So would someone, Mr. Bird, would you like to fill us in on how it's a cross-border, I'm bringing you into the conversation now. So.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's a very good question, and we work as a close team here at the offices at Alpine Shire Council. So Mr. Jeremy is the Director of Assets, and Events sits within his directorate, and Ms. Cook looks after building an amenity within amenities local laws, and this sits within the local law area. That's why that's why she is presenting this report.
Thank you very much. Very nicely explained. Now, have we got any other further? Councillor Keeble, right, a reply?
I've got just one.
Councillor yep. Councillor Pearce.
Mic up and ready. I'm just reminding that hot rod committees can change from one year to the other, to the next. So therefore they might have completely different ideas than the committee the year before them. So their requests and expectations can be different.
Perhaps we bring back portfolios and we'll make you the portfolio in charge of the rod run.
I'll be struggling to get one still.
Dear. Councillor for the downtrodden. Councillor Keeble, tidy this up, please.
No worries, I will, thank you. Good discussion. I think as a council we've listened to the rod run and community conversations over the last 24 months. There's been surveys that have gone out and different people from different groups have provided their feedback. The rod run wanted us to make this decision early this year. We wanted to go in March. We held off because they asked us to, because they wanted to have another conversation. There's been a list of meetings that have been held, and yes, committees do change, Councillor Pearce, from time to time. But I think in this regards, if we give an early decision, we have listened, we have changed. There has been some changes, and there will be avenues for, if they want to have liquor in different areas, there will be avenues now for them to do that with the time that they have.
Thank you, Councillor Keeble. Now, off to the vote. All those in favour? Carried.
Do we get a vote for against or?
It was carried. Everyone was for.
No, I was for.
You weren't for, you were against.
Yeah.
Well, we're still carried.
Oh, well,
Are you calling for division?
yeah, I'll call for it. Haven't had one for a while.
All those against? Councillor Pearce. So I presume all those for? The rest?
Well presumed.
Thank you, Councillor Pearce.
Welcome, Mayor.
8.3.5. Have you... I was going to suggest that Councillor Pearce had tasted some of the hand sanitizer, but I shouldn't do that because I'd have to apologise. And I will apologise, Councillor Pearce. Draft 2020-21 budget report. I know you've been very busy at the hop farm today, Mr. Pearce, so thank you for making it. Ms. Cook.
Mr. Mayor, I'll present this item.
You'll do it. Yep, thank you.
Yep.
Sorry, there's no indication in here that...
No, apology accepted, we'll move on.
Is this small management group you've got and you're all multitasking?
We work together.
Correct.
Yes. So this item relates to the 2021 draft budget report. So based on ongoing community consultation, Council has prepared a draft budget for 2021, which is aligned to the vision in the Council plan. Through continued strong cost management budget, the budget provides a prudent financial position which enables Council to deliver critical services and support our community's resilience as conditions evolve. Following a devastating impact of the bushfires in January and now the coronavirus, we are presented with new risks and challenges. And as a small rural council, it is more important than ever that we are adequately resourced to support our communities to address other challenges, in addition to those, as they recover and through recycling, Victoria and climate change as well. Council is proposing a 2% rate increase to ensure long-term sustainability, which is less than last year's 2.5% increase and is in line with the Fair Go rate system, which caps Victorian Council rates increases in line with inflation. So the key aspects of the budget include more than $1 million spent on communities' social and economic recovery from the bushfires, and increasing the community grants program from 80,000 to over 500,000, and the events program being increased from 200 to 3,000. Both of these increases being funded through bushfire recovery funding. It also comprises a $6.5 million capital works program and a reduction in the general waste charge from $89.20 to $80 per premise. Council is required to give public notice that it intends to adopt the budget report and is required to give 28 days notice of intention to adopt the budget, and the report must be made available to the public. Ordinarily, our budget is available at the front desk of the office. Under the current circumstances, our office is closed. However, the report will be made available in the airlock in the front just after the first front door to the council office. In summary, the budget has been prepared in accordance with our council plan's strategic objectives and presented for council's consideration and public exhibition.
Councillor Forsyth. Councillor Nicholas. Councillor Forsyth.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. As you've just stated, the budget papers will be available in the airlock for those that wish to peruse them. Is there any other format in which they can view those documents?
They're available online as well on our
Thank you.
website, yes.
Thank you. That's the first thing. Second thing is, as part of the consultation process, people, and look, let me just say, congratulate the officers and the whole of the staff for putting this budget together. It is really quite a good one. In the consultation process, people, if they wish, can make submissions to this budget over the next 28 days after it's been posted. And as part of that consultation, could I just impress upon people to make those submissions in the first instance via telephone, in the second instance via email, and then if required, I'm not sure whether we are going to be able to have the face-to-face situations with a committee or a couple of councillors or officers to listen to those submissions. That may not be on the go this current year.
Thank you, Councillor Forsyth. So just a point of clarification there. Submissions under the section 223 must be in writing.
Good.
So we'll receive those in writing. That can either be via post or via email.
And that we are doing that after lots of discussion. We're not doing it lightly. And that part of the discussion is around our future sustainability as a local government, but also about the support that we can offer businesses, including agriculture and residents, in the Alpine Shire, and we can't do that without money. But the really important thing in our discussions is that we recognise that there are people out there who will be hurting, particularly because of COVID-19, and that there are avenues that the Alpine Shire already operates to support people who are in trouble. But I also wanted to pull out that already been mentioned, the huge increase in community grants, which will also be helpful as part of the recovery as we do get to the other end of this incredible episode in our lives.
Thank you, Councillor Nicholas. Any further commentary? Councillor Napstein.
I'd just like to comment again on the key messages of the draft report that was circulated by Charlie, and I thought that summed up the intent of it and the consideration for the 2% increase in the rates, the reasons for them, and it was beautifully put. Even I could understand them.
Anyone else?
Yeah.
Councillor Pearce.
Our businesses are suffering through a total reduction of the income they may receive from all the motels, all the camping grounds, everything, all the businesses except for a few. There was a drought and then the floods, the drought I should say, and fires, and then there was money given out from government towards many people who qualified for it. And some did. And then now with COVID-19, it's just enormous, the suffering of many businesses within all of towns, within all our shire, that are suffering. They're shut, they can't open, they're under pressure, some will fail, many will fail. Many people will be going downhill fast, already have families in the lower income bracket, and I feel inside that we can afford 2%, and hope that we can hold it at zero and bring down the rates by 2%. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Keeble?
Well, thanks, Mr. Mayor. I just want to reiterate a little bit what Councillor Nichols has said, that we understand that, and what Councillor Pearce has said, we understand that people are hurting out there and will for quite some time. We know that a lot of our shire is relying on tourism, and that from the fires and from this episode, and we don't know how long this will last, that financial hardship will continue for a little bit of time. However, there is some hope with the federal and state government with what's going on with some of the announcements that they have made. My question is, because it's not business as usual at the moment, what things will the Shire do when the rate notices go out that's different from previous years? So that. Thank you.
Who's going to answer? Ms. Cook, you going to answer that?
Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you. I think that coming forward, if you are listening out there or you see the information from this meeting, you are listening, make sure you do come forward and talk to Council. Also, on another hand, as Councillor Forsyth was saying, this document, our budget's the most important document that we do each year, sets the scene for next year. So make sure if you get a chance to have a look at it, and make sure if you want to add to it or have some comments, please put those comments in, because we still need to keep that going. Thank you.
Because we are in uncertain times, I'll allow extra questions on this topic. Councillor Nichols?
It's actually not another question. It's a mechanism by which we can further support businesses, which is an amendment to the recommendation or the motion, such that.
The original movers...
Forsyth and myself.
The original move, exactly. Well, John moved and you seconded, didn't he? Yeah. John, happy to accept an amendment to the original motion?
What amendment would you like?
I'm sorry, I just closed it. Amend the draft budget, it's gone again, to indicate a fee of $0 for registrations and permit applications under the Food Act, Public Health and Wellbeing Act, Residential Tenancies Act and Community Local Law 2019 for the 2020-21 financial year.
This will become .6?
Yep.
That's fine.
So the motion's been amended. Is there any further comment on the amended motion?
I have a conflict of interest if that's been put out then. I can't vote on that one. I have a business that we pay those fees, so I will excuse myself.
Oh, I'm not sure that you need to, Councillor Pearce, because we all pay rates and fees and charges.
This is
the fees and charges are different, I think.
From rates, okay. So you're going to note that Councillor Keebles leaves the meeting with a perceived conflict of interest at
8:15.
8:15.
Can I, Mr. Mayor, if I may ask a question to Ms. Cook, that amended motion, in effect, what types of fees come under that?
So there are a number of fees that businesses in particular pay under those various acts in order to run their business. So things like if you are running a cafe or a restaurant, you're required to have a special registration with the Food Act and an inspection in the Health Department. Similarly, if you make jam and you sell jam in your kitchen, out of your kitchen or for the school fair, you also require to have certain food premise registrations for that and waive those fees as well. Under the Residential Tenancies Act, there are fees for caravan park registrations in particular, and under the community local law, there are fees like A-frame signage, public dining permits, trading, and sales from the public footpath as well. So it's a number of those sorts of fees that directly impact on businesses.
So that's consistent with the fees that council waived at the last council meeting with the bushfire recovery funding, yes?
Yes, this is the same process that was used during the bushfire recovery process to waive those fees. So it's a similar quantum as well in terms of saving.
So in effect, it would be 2 years of waiving those fees, correct?
Some of these fees are calendar year, some of these fees are by financial year. So for the ones that are calendar year, they were waived up until December of this year, so it extends that waiving out until the end of that calendar year. For the ones that were financial year, those being the community local law fees in particular are financial year fees, so they would have been due again from the 1st of July. So those fees now will be waived out for the next portion of the year.
Councillor Janus.
Question, Ms Cook. What's the financial implications of this? Do you know? Is it too short notice?
No, so this is in the vicinity of about $65,000 for this budget portion. There will be some implications to waiving fees on the next budget as well.
Do you know what that might be?
For the next budget, around about 55,000. So in total, all of these fees for the portion of 1 year is somewhere between $100,000 and $110,000, depending on how many businesses register, which is why I can't give exact figures because it depends on the amount of registrations we might get. Having said that, we would still require businesses with any change like this to still register and receive their permits under this. They're not exempt from applying for or receiving permits to trade. It's exempt from paying the fee. The fee becomes $0. So there is still a permit and a permit registration process, but the fee is $0. There is no fee associated with those businesses under this proposed amendment.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Cook. Councillor Forsyth.
Yes, and could I just add one thing to what Ms Cook just said, and that is that by applying for your permit, it still means that you'll have to have your insurances and your public liabilities in place.
Yes, there's no change.
Thank you. No, I don't. I think everybody's wrapped this one up exceptionally well. But I do press upon people to actually, if they have any concerns, please get a hold of the copy and just read it. And then if they've got questions, by all means submit them.
Councillor Pearce.
Just adding on, government grants are helpful, council fee reductions and cancellations are helpful to businesses and to a lot of other people. They don't feed back to just the normal people, the poorer people that live down the streets, the suburban streets, etc. So I'm still sticking with what I thought before after hearing all that.
To the vote. All those in favour? Carried. All those against?
Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Keeble can re-enter. Councillor Keeble re-enters at 8:19. 8.3.6, dinner plane special rate, Mr Bird. Or are we going back to Ms Cook?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. A council may declare a special rate for the purpose of defraying the expenses of performing a function that is of special benefit to the persons required to pay the special rate. So the purpose of this report is to recommend that a public notice is given of a proposed declaration of a special rate for the Dinner Plain Village applicable to commercial industrial land only in 2020-2021. By way of background, the way that the rating policy is applied through the Shire is that those properties that are commercial or industrially rated under our policy, defined under our policy, receive a rating of 43% in addition to the 100% of the rating strategy. In Dinner Plain, the properties in Dinner Plain do not come under that same rating policy. Instead, we now apply a definition of a commercial or industrial rating to properties that fall under that definition. However, we raise a special rate to collect the same rates from the Dinner Plain community as is raised from the rest of the Shire. So although we are declaring a special rate because of the special services in Dinner Plain, it equates the Dinner Plain rates and the Dinner Plain rating strategy to the rest of the Shire. Thank you.
Councillor Nicholas.
Second.
Councillor Janus. Councillor Nicholas.
The same discussion that we had about rates applies to Dinner Plain ratepayers. If they need some help because of COVID, they can talk to the Alpine Shire. And collecting those special rates are pretty important to have Dinner Plain operational, particularly in the winter, and also to help build the visitor numbers and community up there in summer.
Councillor Janus.
No, nothing further to add, thank you.
Any further comment? To the vote, all those in favour? Carried. 8.3.7, Organics Curbside Bin Collection Service Update. Now, don't let me guess. Mr. Jeremy doing this one? No? Ms. Cook.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This report presents an overview of the recently announced Victorian State Government's Recycling Victoria policy, as that policy is relevant to curbside collection services, as well as the findings of a community survey which was exploring the option to upgrade the current curbside collection service to include an organic bin for organic food and organics waste. In June-July 2019, Council conducted a community survey to identify community support and issues associated with the introduction of a curbside food organics, garden organics, what we call FOGO, bin collection service. In summary, the majority of respondents to that survey supported the introduction of the FOGO third bin service. For more information, the report contains quite a lot of information about the outcomes of that survey.
Councillor Nicholas, Councillor Keeble. Councillor Nicholas.
We've been talking about FOGO for a long time, even before I was elected to council, apparently. So for a very long time. With the push from the state government, that's become something that we definitely have to move forward into at some stage. We've done some of the work, we've got some of the answers, it's time to move forward. It's really important that we get this FOGO, food and organics, out of landfill, because we can actually turn it into something that's effective and useful into the future. So it's that thing, it's not necessarily rubbish, it's somebody else's treasure. And this is the way of finding that treasure.
Councillor Keeble.
Thank you. Thanks, Councillor Nicholas. I spoke to some residents today just gauging the FOGO stuff, and there was people in towns that they don't want it, just because they already deal with it, but that's not really what this is about. So it isn't, I guess, because some people will deal with their own green waste and some won't or can't.
Especially country folk.
Yeah. So it's good to see there's further investigation going on, because as I pointed out to them, it has to be done by 2030 anyway. 2027 for glass, has to come in before then. So this is going to happen, but we will try and find the best way possible for our ratepayers. It won't suit everyone. I don't think this one is going to suit everyone, but we will be required to do it, and it will happen at some stage. But I think we're moving in a direction that is finding the right solution that will be for the majority of ratepayers.
The yardbirds will starve, Councillor Keeble.
They will starve at our house, that's for sure.
Councillor Janus.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think it really is time to get this underway for our residents, and there have been a lot of people waiting for this to occur. Having experience in other shires that run this, it is a great service, and particularly for the elderly people who can't get to dispose of their green waste. it's a great service for them. Sorry,
Oh, it's a bin cartoon that Councillor Councillor Pearce has got. He was. He should be. I apologise for him disrupting you, Councillor Janus.
it's all right.
Well, I might be sitting in Ray's area, but
Yes, and you're right. It's not going to suit everybody, but we have to look at it on a bigger scale for the most of our community. But we also have to look at it as far as our environment goes, and that's a big factor in all of this. Is how do we properly get rid of all that waste and make it into something else we can reuse? That is important, and so I'm glad we are actually moving ahead with it. And I know the staff are limited, and it's been a big burden on them to get to where we are. But there are other councils that have done this, and I'm sure they will share their learnings with us as well.
Well, if ex-mayor and Councillor Jan Von Arx is watching, she was banging on about this the whole time I was on council. So Jan, we're almost there. Any further comment? To the vote. Carried. Carried. 8.3.8 planning application. We had some earlier commentary around that that everyone's received. Ms. Cook, can you talk to some of that commentary that we received and then go to the application?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yep, and on with the report, please.
I'd like to propose an alternate recommendation.
Councillor Nicholas. Can we have your
Turn it off,
recommendation?
sorry, yep.
And then we can see if we've got a seconder for it.
I'd like to propose the alternative recommendation that the notice of decision to grant a planning permit is not issued. I'm not sure what the wording should be for there, for the two-lot subdivision, for the following reasons, which I'm going to have to read from the board. The development does not comply with the objective of State Planning Policy 15.012S building design, as it does not contribute positively to the local context or enhance the public realm. The development does not comply with the objective of State Planning Policy 15.015S neighbourhood character, as it does not recognise, support and protect neighbourhood character. The development does not meet the purposes of the general residential zone, as it does not respect the neighbourhood character of the area. The development does not comply with the objectives of clause 55.021 neighbourhood character, as it does not respect the existing neighbourhood character or contribute to the preferred neighbourhood character or appropriately respond to the features of the surrounding area.
Could I have a seconder for that motion, please? Councillor Napstone. Go ahead, Councillor Nicholas.
Okay. So our planning department are very hardworking and they're very thorough, and they have put together a fantastic report. And what I really like to point out is that the Victorian planning provisions use words like appropriate, which aren't very precise, and leave things like neighbourhood character in particular to interpretation. And for me, the 5 objections that we received indicate that there is a problem, and in particular, what the problem is about what the new development would look like in the landscape. Sorry, going back another page. The neighbourhood character objective in the Victorian planning provisions state that you must ensure that the design responds to the features of the site. This site is actually on a bit of a mound, a bit of a high point, and having a huge building or a large building compared to the buildings around it on such a high point do mean that in scale it's very different to what's around it. From clause 5402 of the Victorian planning provisions, there's a standard A1, and that states that the building must be appropriate to the neighbourhood and the site. Standard A3 says that the building must be 9 metre setback or an average of the setbacks of the buildings either side. Our planning department hasn't given me what the that average would be. I don't have it to hand, I mean, but the current setback is 4.9 metres, which is quite a lot less than the 9 metres that would normally be expected. That setback's written in a couple of standards. There's A3 and A8, both use that standard. A8's from clause 55, and it's about taking into account the effect of the visual bulk of the building and whether it's acceptable in the neighbourhood as well as the setback. So there's quite a lot of stuff that's open to interpretation that the planning department has interpreted one way, but I think the neighbours of this proposed development, and certainly I, from looking at the site and appraising it visually, is I agree with that there's a bit more to it than whether the proposal ticks all the other boxes. Yeah, I think I'll leave it there.
Councillor Napstone.
I think Councillor Nicholas has covered all the technical points and all of that, and listening to the objections and about the neighbourhood and getting the feel of the why. It's a beautiful dwelling. It probably ticks all those boxes, but it doesn't. It's not a fit, and this is why the objections were coming. And it's really, really difficult. Again, it's one of those really agonising decisions that you kind of have to make. Yes, it's lovely, but when you look in the context of the surroundings, the 3 dwellings at the back, the neighbours, when you drive up and down, and all of those reasons, it's just not a fit. McMansion is a nasty word, so I won't use it, but it's kind of what comes to mind.
Any further commentary? Councillor Forsyth.
Can we just go, Mr. Jeremy, so that we can have a look at those 4 objections? Thank you. Neighbourhood character is it does not recognise, support and protect neighbourhood character. Number 2, if you travel along Baker Gully Road, there is a character, I'll agree, but it's not got anything to do with the buildings. It's to do with the actual road itself, Baker's Gully Road, whether it's got trees lining, it doesn't have gutters, so therefore it's a bit more rural, and the houses in there, there's no uniformity about how they've been built, no uniformity about block sizes. So I don't think personally I don't believe that number 2 it covers off on what it requires. General residential zone, Well, according to our experts in the planning department, it does, as it does not respect the neighbourhood character. Again, neighbourhood character again. All of these 1, 2, 3, 4 are to do with character. Now, Councillor Nicholas mentions that the house is built on a bit of a rise and it looks like a big house. I defy you to find a castle or a church that's not been built on a rise. That's how it's been done, that's how it's always been done, and it will continue to be done that way. The other thing is, if a person doesn't actually like the look of a development, I don't think that is the reason for dismissing or agreeing to a development. And I don't think we should ever get down that track. Let's face it, one man's cave is another man's castle. So, yes, I don't totally agree with the objections.
Any further Councillor Keeble?
Thanks. Listening to both my colleagues there. My question is, I just wanted to follow up on Councillor Nichols' point about the setbacks and whether that can be answered. If the setbacks were 9 metres and this one is 4.5 metres, is that what I've heard? 4.9, my apologies. And I just, whether Ms Cook is able to make any comment about that, about the setbacks. Yep.
So the setback
Thank you.
was previously there are various I'll go to the technical assessment. Because there are existing buildings in Bakersfield Road that have a setback less than 4 metres, and vegetation within the existing street setback area is not considered worthy of retention. The greatest visual impact will be from 29 Bakersfield Road to the north of the site and the driveway area on this site.
Okay, so just so I'm clear, so it has to be 9 metres setback.
So the setback is determined either at 9 metres or the average of the setbacks of the adjoining properties. I'm sorry, I don't have that average figure in front of me. However, this is a non-compliant setback against the standard at clause 55031. However, it's not quite as clear cut.
Top of page 51, it refers to the street setback. And in there it says that the proposed street setback is considered to meet the relevant decision guidelines and objectives as it provides an appropriate design response. It takes into account the prevailing setbacks of existing buildings on nearby lots, which includes setbacks to Bakersglade Road of less than 4 metres, and there is minimal significant landscaping within the existing street setback. I hope that answers part of your question.
Thank you, Mr. Bird. Councillor Janus?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I can see where Councillor Nicholas is coming from, and certainly the people who have raised the objections. However, having done a tour of the area myself, I feel that the area is peppered with similar high sort of density type buildings, and this is a a modern building. Yes, we might not like its design. I have heard someone say it looks a little bit eastern suburbs, let's say, without making any reference to any particular suburb. However, it's that's how the design is, and we all have different designed house. The the house that it's replacing is not of heritage listing, and the applicant has, I think, gone through all the requirements that council have asked from him. The setback, and I was going to mention, there are similar setbacks in the area, and then when we also go around into Railway Avenue, there are lots of little premises there that we have allowed that are quite small. They've been 2 to 3 premises built on very small blocks, and you know, they have blended in with the surrounds. So I'm sorry, Councillor Nicholas, I can't support your motion at this point because I feel that the applicant has met the guidelines, and just because we don't necessarily like the look of his house, I don't mind it myself, but that it should be cause to reject his application.
Any further questions until I revert back to the mover?
Just a quick mention of right to an
Right of reply, Councillor Nicholas.
Yep, my right of reply. I just wanted to make it really clear that I haven't used my opinion of the building at all in this argument, and I actually don't object to the building itself somewhere else. So thank you for that. What I do think is very important is I've listened to the people in the community, and I do think that 5 objections is a lot of objections to a development. I take the comments about setback and that the planning department has suggested that it's okay and it fits, but there are other components of the decision guidelines that take into account, that request that the visual bulk and the visual impact of the building is taken into account when the setback is being judged. So I just reiterate that. And I forgot what the other argument was. Oh, that's right. And that, yes, neighbourhood character is very subjective, and that's part of the problem. But again, listening to the community people who are living around it, that's what I'm hearing, that it doesn't fit in to where they live. And it suits those down on the Kilfinian Way or whatever it's called. That sort of building fits exactly in those places that you guys have talked about, but I don't believe that it fits where it's being proposed currently.
Thank you, Councillor Nicholas. Time to go to Councillor Nicholas's recommendation. All those in favour of the motion, please raise your hand. All those against? We revert back to the original motion. All those in favour of the original motion? Oh, we do, sorry. I apologise for lack of procedure, Councillor Janus. Can I have a mover and a seconder for the original motion, please? Councillor Janus. Councillor Pearce. So this is Ms Cook, and that a notice of decision to grant a planning permit be issued for a 2-lot subdivision boundary realignment, etc., etc. Correct?
Correct, in accordance with the conditions as attached in attachment A.
Thank you very much. Councillor Forsyth.
According to the conditions as as in the planning application. Is that correct?
Yes.
Right. How can council ensure that those conditions are actually going to be met?
So the conditions are contained within the council agenda report so that they become a part of the permit when it is granted. And then what happens is that we undertake various stages of compliance on those conditions, things like receiving endorsed plans, following through landscaping plans, engineering plans, depending on what the conditions are. There's a number of stages of conditioning that needs to occur generally before a development is underway. Throughout the development, we either undertake proactive inspection and enforcement of conditions, or we very heavily rely on complaints about non-compliance to conditions, particularly from neighbours and other objectors. We have finite resources, so we do rely heavily on people telling us when they believe conditions have not been met as well.
Yes, that's what I thought, because I read a report just recently about one of the government departments, I think in Melbourne, going out checking on cladding on buildings that have been reasonably recently built, and finding that there weren't even any fire provisions in these buildings, but they'd been ticked off.
With buildings, there is a requirement for building inspection to be undertaken throughout the building process.
Realise
that.
that.
Is slightly different, so something like that I would have assumed picked up through that process.
Yeah. Okay, just as long as the conditions are tight.
Any further questions?
No further questions.
To the vote, all those in favour? Those against? Carried. Assembly of Councillors, recommendation that the summary of Assembly of Councillors from March 2020 be received. Mover and a seconder, please.
Yep.
Councillor Janus, Councillor Knapstein, all those in favour? Carried. General business. From my left, Councillor Keeble.
Oh, general business. Geez, without getting too political, we hear you, we see you, and we believe you. That's all I want to say.
Councillor Nicholas.
Can I reserve my right?
You can reserve your right. Councillor Janus.
Just correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Mayor, but in relation to the messaging that we put out for our tourists, I think we need to be very clear. We do rely very heavily on our tourists, and they support our businesses. And I think I have said this to somebody. I regard the relationship as a little bit of a marriage, whereby we take our vows, and it's for better or for worse, for richer or for poorer. And yeah, I've had 47 years of it, Daz. We won't go down that path. So, and I understand that it is difficult for people who want to come here because it's such a beautiful area to get away from it all up there. But and those thinking people amongst those will understand that messaging. But we don't want to use the incorrect language when we tell them, "Could you please stay home?" Because we want them back here, and we want the place to be better than what it is now, and we want them to work with our local communities and to put in with us, because it's our local community that makes the area what it is and what people want to come here for. It's the people as well as our beautiful environment. So when you do come back, and I hope you do, all those people, please, we want you to be inclusive into our communities, and put in and help our volunteers if you can in some way. Help our volunteer committees that put on all the great festivals and all of that. So it's a great opportunity for you to become more involved and use it as like your second home. Thank you.
Councillor Napstein?
Ditto. I think these are trying times anyway, and that goes without saying, and that reluctance to have people come and visit just now is absolutely there. It's please come back when it's a celebration, and everybody's a bit scared. Nobody knows what it's going to look like afterwards, and much as we'd like to just think that everything's going to go back to the pre-fire and COVID normal, it will come back to normal, but normal will look differently. And if there's any consolation in these emergencies, it's certainly doing a lot for the environment when you look at it globally, so there are benefits to this. And maybe we can sit at home and work out how we can move forward and incorporate climate change into the world that's going to look like whatever the new normal is. And just best wishes to everybody.
Councillor Forsyth?
Yes. Firstly, could we explore the situation of having our next ordinary council meeting, assuming that we're not going to be having it via Zoom or one of those other social messaging apps, at 4 p.m. instead of 7?
I agree, and by the time I've tied my chooks up and fed my dogs and then put some food in, I was almost late. So can we have a little more time from after the briefing session to get here? So, and had a shower, because I was a little bit stinky.
Right, so, well, I was thinking about having it at 4. Well,
I'm not sure you answered his question, Mr. Mayor. You gave us a lot of information about your...
No, exactly. So I agree with Councillor Forsyth. I think we need to change the time to an earlier time.
Yes.
If we're not having a gallery.
4 p.m.
4 p.m. in the afternoon.
For this meeting.
For
You're
this
correct.
meeting.
Next month.
Next
Is that going to
month.
suit you?
12 o'clock, well, I'm not sure, but it could do if it's work-wise. Anyway, I don't want to, I'm just asking what...
Well, even if it's 5, it'll be a lot easier as well.
Yep.
Yep, cool.
4 or 5. And on a lighter note, just looking around this illustrious grouping here, I think we can nearly call ourselves ACDC now, which is the Alpine Council Disaster Council.
Well, Lord.
Councillor Pearce.
Is there any other things that fits? Manual one over the whole usable, got little ones in front of you, just have to press the button.
Councillor Pearce, I received an email during the meeting that some of the audience have found it difficult to hear you, so I assume that's been during the time when you haven't used the microphone.
Take
And
it back.
you have a lot to say, which is very important. Our community wants to hear it, so please use your microphone.
Look, I've just-
The sound's just gone off completely, I think, on the YouTube.
Good.
Councillor Nicholas.
It's more of a congratulations, really, but it's about what we're going through as a community and a nation and a globe. And I'm thinking at the moment mostly about the youngsters who, certainly in Victoria, many of whom won't be at school, and that is a absolute challenge, and just really wishing their families the best through it all.
Yep, especially to those doing VCE this year, I really feel for you. You are, it's a tight task and it's difficult, but One of the things I would like to say, and this all comes back to what everyone's intimated around the table, is that we need to be caring for the people in our community. We need to show empathy. We need to understand that some people need, or I, for instance, had to get an Airbnb for my 2 children who returned from America, so for them to live and isolate properly in our community, that was a path that I thought suited me best, and to the people that provided that accommodation, I'll be eternally grateful. But it is very easy for people to jump to conclusions about what people are doing in our community, and I think people need to be more courteous to each other. Yes, we are in the middle of a terrible pandemic, and I encourage you all to be kind and behave in a decent manner. I'd also like to
just quickly mention the health workers.
Oh yeah, the health, all those, anyone that's at a frontline responder, anyone that's a health worker, anyone that's chemists even, they're frontline as well too. Is everyone just heed the instructions to wash your hands properly, socially isolate, don't do anything that puts you in a situation where you could be seen to be doing something that's not allowed. And we'll get through this. I'm confident of it. We're here for a while though, and take on board what Councillor Forsyth suggested about changing our meeting times, I'm hopeful that we will get some support from state or federal government at some stage. I'm not quite sure what that looks like, but when we do, we'll be quick to pass that on to our communities. And I'd like to thank our staff that have been, who've been terrific during this time, and I'd like to thank them for their support, and I'd like to thank the management team for the quick way we responded with our staff to get them home, to keep them safe, to keep them working, to keep things as open as we possibly can. For you looking on television, yes, I have got 3 phones. 2 of them are going into the recycling. CEO thought I was running some sort of illicit gambling operation, but I can assure you I'm not. I'm just taking the time to clean out some of the things in my house that I haven't had a chance to for a while. Correct, there's bins out in the hall here, so if you need to recycle a telephone, Alpine Shire is a drop-off point for recycle of telephones, and we have a facility here at the Shire. But our doors are shut. But I'm sure if you leave them in the airlock, someone can get them into with the rubber gloves, can get them into the receptacle. Thank you. Righto, so general business is done. 11 motions for which notice has previously been given. We haven't. Item 12, reception and reading of petitions. Council has received a petition for a 50-metre swimming pool in Bright with a retractable roof. A report will be tabled to the next ordinary council meeting in May. Thank you for those people who put that together. Item 13, documents for sealing. Recommendation that the following documents be signed and sealed. Move in a second. Councillor Forsyth, Councillor Janus. Can we have a vote on that, please? All those in favour? Carried. There being no further business, as the time, Mr. CEO, is 8:59. Close the meeting. Safe home, everybody. To all you that are watching out there, sleep well, and we'll speak to you all soon.
There's 5 at the moment, there's been 32 views.
32 views.
5 at the moment. 5 at the moment.